Well, I'm finally back and I'm going to read the second chapter from the book Grandma's Attic, and it's called When God Knew Best. My day was ruined. I had been promised a trip, and one of those freak sudden spring storms had come up in the night. The ground was covered with snow, and more was falling. Of course, we couldn't drive to the city in a storm. I could understand that, couldn't I? I couldn't. As I poked moodily at my cereal, Grandma bustled cheerfully around the kitchen. How could she be so happy when my whole day lay in bits around my feet? What can I do all day? No one can even come to play. How come it had to storm today? And it isn't fair, I complained. Well, child, Grandma replied, the Lord has a reason for changing your plans. He always knows what's best for us. This I doubted, but since Grandma was so much better acquainted with the Lord than I was, I didn't like to dispute her. I could see no possible reason for a disappointment like this. And if the Lord did have one, he wasn't telling it to me. Finally finished with breakfast, I stared grumpily out the window. Grandma's voice broke into my unhappy thoughts. I'm going to tie a quilt today. Maybe you'd like to help. That would be better than nothing, I guessed. The quilt was laid out on the big table, and the yarn for tying it was threaded in big needles. In spite of myself, I found the bright-colored quilt pieces fascinating. Look, Grandma, I exclaimed, isn't this a piece of your dress? I remember it when I was just little. I tried to pick the flowers off in church. Grandma laughed. Oh, I thought my camera wasn't going, but yes, it is. Okay. Grandma laughed. Yes, that was my dress all right, and here's a piece of your uncle's first suit with long pants. Oh, how proud he was of that suit, and here's your mother's first school pinafore. This one is pretty, Grandma. What did it come from? Grandma looked at the square of lavender cotton with small white flowers on it. Why, that is a piece of my birthday dress, she replied. I'd almost forgotten about that. Which birthday, Grandma? You've had a lot of them. Yes, replied Grandma. I was 12 years old that year, 2 years older than you are. Tell me about it, Grandma, I begged. What made that birthday so special? Grandma thought quietly for a moment. Then she began. My birthday came in June. We didn't have much money in the summer. Pa depended on good crops in the fall to supply the money for things we needed and couldn't grow on the farm. But this year, Ma had a surprise for me. She had bought this piece of goods the fall before and saved it for a dress for summer. Oh, it was a pretty dress. There were tiny tucks in the waist, and Ma had put handmade lace around the neck and sleeves. I had never had such a wonderful dress, and it was to be worn on my birthday for a very special occasion. The all-day picnic was to be held in Carter's Grove, about 10 miles from our home. I would see all my best friends and have a whole glorious day with no chores to worry about. The dress was hung where I could see it as I helped Ma get the food ready for the picnic. I was so excited that I wasn't really much help. But Ma understood how I felt. I dreamed of nothing but that picnic and the new dress. The night before the big day, I began to feel funny. My throat scratched and my head hurt. I thought it best not to say anything to Ma, however. Nothing was going to spoil that picnic. But when morning came, the dreadful truth was known. I was sick. I struggled bravely to the table, but Ma took one look and announced, "Mabel has the measles, Pa. You'll have to take the boys and go on the picnic. I'll stay home with her." Oh, what a terrible disappointment not to be able to wear that beautiful dress, or see my friends, or celebrate my birthday. Ma did her best to comfort me, but I would not be comforted. "The Lord has a reason for it," she said. But I wouldn't believe it. There couldn't be any reason for a disappointment like this. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, aware that I had thought exactly the same thing just a short time ago, but Grandma seemed not to notice and went on with her story. I dozed off and on through the day, between times feeling very miserable and sorry for myself. Finally, toward evening, the buggy turned into the lane and Pa and the boys returned from the picnic. As the boys hurried to the barn to take care of the chores, Pa remarked, "Well, Mabel can be glad she didn't go to the picnic in her nice new dress today." Grandma looked fondly at the soft square. "It seems as though I can still feel how soft that bonnet and coat were. I wore them for several winters, but the time Ma remembered best was the first time I had them on." Uh-oh, I skipped some here. Sorry, I'll just go back a little bit. Pa remarked, "Well, Mabel can be glad she didn't go to the picnic in her nice new dress today." Glad? Whatever did he mean? How could I be glad to have missed the big picnic of the year? Pa was going on. "Carter's River is pretty high today, and the children were warned to stay away from it. But the little girls forgot, I guess. They wandered too close and slipped in. The current was so strong that they were carried nearly to the pasture before we could get them out. They were a scared bunch of girls, I'll tell you. They all had to be taken home." Pa looked at me reflectively. "Your friend Sarah, Jane, ruined her good dress," he said, "and you would have been right with her." This was true, I knew. We were always together, and what if we hadn't been pulled out in time? Why, this might have been the last birthday I would have had. As the rest of the family ate supper, I thought about the day and Ma's comment that God had a reason for my staying home. Maybe I did believe it after all. I wore my birthday dress a little late, but whenever I wore it, I was reminded that God orders the lives of His children for their good. Grandma and I continued to tie the quilt in silence. I was still disappointed about my missed trip, but if, as Grandma said, God knows what is best for His children, maybe I should just be glad that I was one of them. There would be lots of days ahead for trips to the city, and surely there must be a lot more stories in these quilt squares.